I have a different setup here, and hope it works out for me. Or else I won't find out until after we publish the live because I'm looking at a webcam rather than at the camera itself. Today, I'm going to talk about being authentic. In prison, you will find a lot of people will say one thing about what is important to them, but their words don't always reflect their actions. A lot of people will talk about how successful they're going to be when they come home. A lot of people will talk about how hard they're working on their case. A lot of people will talk about what they're going to do, what type of jobs they're going to live, where they're what jobs they're going to pursue, where they're going to live, how they're going to build their life. But while they're in prison, they're focused on just passing the time, getting through one day to the next. And of course, that doesn't always translate into getting the outcome that we want. And it's no different out here, right? When we're out here, we may say that we want to advance our career. We may say we want to build new businesses. We may say that we're going to, move past some of the bad decisions and into something better. But that doesn't always work out. And one of the reasons that is because we don't have this clear direction that I learned from leaders. And leaders teach us to live with absolute intention, to truly know how to define success, to truly know what it is we're going to accomplish, and then to lay out a plan. And that plan should help us go from where we are to where we want to go, and it should help us set the priorities in place of knowing what do we have to do every single day in order to reach the next level. Now, when I was locked inside of a prison, I couldn't even comprehend what it was going to be like on the other side of the journey, right? I mean, I was only 23 years old. I was facing life in prison, and by the time the judge banged down the gavel, I had 20, no, 45, a 45-year sentence. And I didn't know how to comprehend that. I didn't know what it really meant. I'd heard this concept about good time, and if I do well, I may be able to get out earlier, but I didn't understand how that played out. I mean, this was back in 1987, and I was young and I'd never been incarcerated before. But I knew that I hated jail. I hated living in confinement, and it was being locked in that jail cell that exposed me to literature that helped to change the way that I think. And one of the books that inspired me was or I don't even know if it was a book or if it was a chapter in an anthology, but it was the story of Gandhi. And one of his statements was, if we can keep everything we think, everything we say, and everything we do in harmony, we can really advance the prospects for happiness. And I wanted to be happy. I mean, I knew how difficult it was for me to be separated from the people that I love and to be locked in there for a long time. And there were times that I was really afraid of what I was going to encounter when I got to the next step. But it was the real salvation for me, or the real sense of crutch I guess I had, was reading about people who had gone through struggle and who had come back stronger than ever, who were more resilient than ever. And it could have been Gandhi, it could have been Viktor Frankl, it could have been Malcolm X, it could have been, Nelson Mandela, anybody that faced an enormous challenge and yet figured out a pathway to become successful. Those are the people that helped me figure it out. And what they helped me realize is that we really have to be authentic. We can't talk about wanting to do something but then have our actions be something else. We can't talk about wanting to overcome a challenge but then have our thoughts be different than what we're doing, or what we say we want to accomplish. So I've found that when I was in prison, that the best way to really prepare to get through those weeks and months and years and decades would be to clearly define what I'm going to accomplish. And that's what I would encourage anybody that's on a part of our Being Resilient channel or Prison Professors channel to be thinking as well. Identify what is the best possible outcome, and then create this plan with this series of goals that will help you get to what you want to achieve. And if you can do that, that's going to be one of the ways that you can move forward. I see Troy is back on this channel. I don't know what time zone you're in, Troy, but love to see it on the chat. And my monitor's over here, so I really can't see anybody who's on here. But I wanted to throw this concept out today about authenticity. I hope that if there's one thing that I'm doing by recording all of these documents. I'm doing this later. One of the tools that I create, I guess, to keep my, I don't even know if you'd call it a ministry, or because it's really more secular than religious, but one of my passions is trying to teach and inspire people in prison who still are trying to figure out, how am I going to get through this challenge? And I do this by creating these videos that I bring inside of prisons and show people, if you use your time wisely right now, you can avoid some of the complications that really make life difficult for other people who have gone through this system. And it doesn't matter what you're in there for. What matters is how you want to get out, how you want to emerge. And there's a lot of people that I see on YouTube that are building these channels right now, kind of glorifying the hardcore gangster type life in prison. And they purport to say that they are, this is, they're not really glorifying this image but that's all they talk about, is how they put in work. And when they say put in work, they don't mean the kind of work that is consistent with what people in society would call work. It's the kind of work that's distinguishes them or differentiates them in prison and elevates them to become some type of a gang leader or shot caller or something like that in a prison environment. And that pathway, those decisions that you make, are going to have a specific outcome. I can tell you the outcome that it's having for them is they're becoming superstars with regard to entertainment, and they're getting, millions of views on their channel. And I frankly sometimes like to watch them because it reminds me of what it was like being inside of a high security penitentiary. But if you don't want that kind of outcome, if you don't want the outcome that results in, if you're in prison or going to prison, if you don't want the outcome that results in you being separated longer than necessary from your family, the outcome that results in you having to serve significant periods of your time in segregated housing, or results in you getting out of prison and not being able to find employment or find opportunities to integrate with society, then it's probably important to think about the what it is that you want, and then think about, what can I do with the time that I have. I found that there's always something to do. Where it doesn't matter which prison you're in, there's always some type of way to develop a positive mindset, to develop a skill set that is going to translate or at least accelerate the prospect for success. And what I used to teach these kinds of courses when I was inside, and it always boiled down to authenticity, where I would ask somebody, how badly do you want to succeed when you get out? And every hand went up in the class. Let me tell you, prison being a captive place, it's easy to fill a classroom because people don't have anything to do. So you'd have, 40 people in this room, or whatever capacity was. And that would always be the question: how many are committed to succeeding upon release? And every hand go up. I say, how many people are going to come back to prison when they conclude the sentence? And not a single hand went up. And I would say, we're really amazing because we're in the most amazing prison, because statistics show that 7 out of every 10 people or more are going to have some challenge with the criminal justice system again, and they will be coming back inside. 7 out of 10. But in this room, not a single one of us are coming back. It's amazing. And then, guys would laugh. And then I'd get this story inevitably from somebody in the class, or several of them who'd speak up and be honest. They'd say, look, I'm going to try to do the right thing when I get out, but if things don't work out, I'm going to do what I have to do. And my response would always be the same. If you've got that attitude that you're going to do what you have to do, you may as well just stay here and preserve your bunk and preserve your job and preserve your seniority, because things aren't going to work out when you get out. It's very difficult to go through a challenge and create opportunities on the other side. The system is not geared up to help people succeed. The system is geared up to help people fail. In fact, there's some great irony in there that says the longer we expose somebody to corrections, the less likely that person is to be able to function as a law-abiding, contributing citizen. People come out of prison, and the reality is most of them can't find employment, can't find a place to live, can't get credit, can't figure out a way to open a business or become self-employed. And a lot of that has to do with the choices that we make while we're in prison. There's no doubt that there's discrimination and retaliation and judging, but they can pass all the laws they want. Government's not going to save you. They can pass the laws you want about ban the box and all that kind of nonsense. But if you're not authentic, if you don't come out strong, if you don't come out understanding what do you want to do with your life, how are you going to succeed, how are you going to prosper, there are going to be very few opportunities. When I came home, I had a lot of relationships with business leaders and employers, and I still do, try to work to help people find their way into the job market. And I remember coordinating a job interview for a guy in the halfway house. I'd spoken in a halfway house. I was still in the halfway house, but I was, still kind of testing myself and trying to create these programs that would teach and inspire other people. And I remember one guy asked me if I could help him get an interview with an employer, and I did. And he didn't get the job. And when he came back, he told me, "Man, I thought you had me hooked up. I thought you said you were going to get me the job." I said, "Well, let me find out. Let me figure out what happened." So I called the guy who was the hiring manager at a pretty large employer, and I said, "I sent you, this guy to come see you. What happened?" He says, "Well, I gave him a fair shot, gave him an interview, but the guy came in here, he was slouching in his chair, he had his baseball cap on, kind of cocked sideways, the way he spoke, everything about him reflected that he was going to instill fear in the other employees, and not the type of he wasn't really reflecting the type of attitude that I wanted our customers or the people that are part of our business community to see and be around. And so for that reason, I can't bring him on the team. It's not that I'm not willing to hire somebody who has a background of being formerly incarcerated. It's that if the guy is going to come here, he's got to demonstrate his commitment to contribution to building a stronger business, or being a part of our business community. That's a reality that happens in prison. The longer somebody stays in prison, the more that person learns how to live in that environment. And by learning to live in that environment, a person is simultaneously learning the mannerisms that make it much more difficult to merge and integrate with society. So if you don't want that type of an outcome, you got to be authentic. You got to be saying, okay, what books should I read? How should I be training myself to communicate? What skills should I be developing? How am I going to build this record that persuades people to see me, not for the bad decisions that I made that put me here, but rather how I responded to those decisions? Because if I can create that new narrative, that new story, I'm going to influence the way people see me. And that makes all the difference in the world. That is the pattern to being authentic. So if you want to be authentic, my recommendation is you follow this kind of pathway that I'm putting forward in this series of daily journals, and you'll see that each one of them focuses on one of these 10 different aspects of that we call, and we create a program that we bring into prisons called the Straight A Guide. And notice the first one is more of a prerequisite. It requires us to define success, to talk about what is the best possible outcome in our life. That's like a prerequisite. If I want to get a driver's license, and I'm 14 or 15, I first got to go through a class, and get that certificate that shows that I completed the class. And if I complete that class, I've got the prerequisite. In order to complete that class, I've got to hit very specific goals, which is the second prong of this approach, right? I've got to set very specific goals that will reflect my commitment to the values by which I profess to live. So values and goals, first step. If I work toward values and goals, then I can embark upon these straight A's. And the first A is attitude. I got to have 100% commitment to being successful in what I say is important to me. That's why the first A is attitude. The second A, as you'll see from the thumbnails on our YouTube channel at Prison Professors, is aspiration. You got to be able to see yourself as being something more than you are right now, because it's hard to sustain a level of energy and discipline for a long period of time. But if we can see it, if we can project it, if we can believe it, we then can, muster the discipline and the energy that we need to go forward. Then it's action. You got to take action. You got to take incremental action steps to take you from where you are to where you want to go. So values, goals, attitude, aspiration, action. And then, as we discussed in an earlier video, you've got to create these accountability metrics that help you stay the course, going from one step to the other step. And then it is about awareness. You got to keep your head in the game. If you're always focused on where you want to be in the months, years, decades ahead, then your head is in the game and you see opportunities around you and the world becomes aware of you. That's, what awareness is about. You become aware of opportunities and the world becomes aware of you. And then you've got to be authentic. That's what we're talking about today. You can't be this guy that talks about what you're going to do and not do it, because as you've heard many times before, your actions speak a lot louder than your words. People will see if you're truly on this path, and to the extent that you can document it, then you just advance the ball. It's like building a resume that helps you get into a job market. It's like building a credit report that helps you get credit. You've got to be authentic. And the next two steps, which I'll be talking about in the next 2 days, is going to be, one is you've got to celebrate achievements. You got to celebrate little achievements as you go. If you're true to the game, if you're true to what you're doing, you're going to achieve little achievements and you're going to know how to feel stronger. And each one of those achievements is going to help you recalibrate and re-energize and stay the course. And then the 10th is appreciation. We got to show our blessings, show our appreciation and gratitude for the blessings that come our way. And that's the cycle. That's the 10-part cycle that's part of the straight A guide that I try to teach. And through all these daily journals, I'm going to show how I never ask anybody to do anything that I'm not doing, and say, this is a pattern that got me through 9,500 days in prison. And it's the pattern that I'm using to recalibrate and rebuild in society as I am always reinventing myself and building new businesses and creating new opportunities out of nothing. So now I'm going to have to turn over here to my computer screen because I'm looking at a webcam right now, but I want to see if there's any questions or anything like that anybody asked. And again, as is typical, I don't see any. So I am going to sign off until tomorrow with another daily journal, because it is time to get to work. Thanks.